So, hello, Earthlings. I had to cut off, and I could go back and edit, but I kind of don't want to. There's a lot to cover. I had that weird phone call you heard. This lady has been calling me and acting like she's a telemarketer, and yet her number is showing up on my phone. Like, I got a call history to prove this. And she's like denying that they're calling. But their website shows the number that's calling and several other. They're like a chain, okay? Or affiliates or something. And they even list each other on their websites. I did my research after being harassed, and they're all linked together. Idaho, Utah, Colorado. They're all affiliated. And she sat there and denied it and tried to shout me down like I'm her employee and I need to be corrected. And I said, I don't work for you. And I have a call history to prove it, that you've been making these calls. Your firm has been making these calls. And you're like the headquarters. So, bye. She didn't call me back. She's probably complaining. It's okay, because I'm going to show them my call history. And I've got this video where I'm talking about it, right? That's a silly video. Probably wouldn't use it for that. But anyway, so back to the Tau Mono. This thing, at least it looked like one, right? It definitely looked like one. And my grandson saw it and went, Mommy, and ran up the stairs towards me. And this is in the daytime. And my youngest had seen it. And then all this stuff happened with the gas furnace and the electrical the next day. And I suddenly realized that this former human man, I'm not sure of his origins, has been trying to warn me and has been getting after my son, probably because he was resisting doing his homework and he was being homeschooled, right? It just was easier after moving here from elsewhere, and he got to where he liked it. He could do his homework on a laptop that they would send us. But then he would have days when he didn't want to do it, and being 12 or 13, I forget. Oh no, 13 by this point. He was just kind of starting to be feisty. You know how teenagers are. We all went through it. And he would get pinched. He wanted to play video games instead of doing his homework and on certain days. And just randomly, I guess. Not really certain days. So that's one thing that these Tau Mono do is if you're disrespecting your elders, they will pinch you. Or if you're doing something dangerous, they will pinch you. It's like they're trying to still be the guardians of their society. But here we are. We're not from that island. And I'm still confused about it. How and why? I'm grateful that he saved our lives. But I don't understand. But it doesn't matter. So, one time he had, after my son told me about this before I'd figured it out, I had pushed him with my finger on his chest, diagonally across the kitchen floor, from the living room where he'd been sitting, through the French doors, across the kitchen floor, out the stairwell door, and out the back door. And told him, don't come back, stop harassing us. The nerve. And I was furious. I like my house to be peaceful and safe. And I did not understand at the time that he was trying to warn us because the aggressiveness of it, the pinching and such. And he wasn't communicating well. Mumbling in my ear in a strange language I could not understand it. So I was mad. I was like, I don't know why you think you get to pick on my family. And I was ranting, and I hear this shh. So I spin around from the kitchen sink where I was at. I clean when I get mad too sometimes. And I see him for a split second sitting cross-legged on the floor. And, in between the other counter space across the room and the gas stove. And I'm just like, did you just tell me to shh in my own kitchen? And my son sitting in the other room is like, Mom, you're just feeding the energy. You got to calm down. Remember you told me this. It's like, yeah. So I had to sit there and calm myself down because I was shaking. I was so mad. The adrenaline had bumped up so fast just because I was furious. And I'd exerted so much energy on this being. So then a few days or weeks later, it wasn't very long. It wasn't right away, but it was a short amount of time. And we had this thing with the gas stove and the electrical, one right after the other. And that's when I realized, like I said before. So we packed up the house, put everything in the garage I was also renting that was back in the corner behind the front door. We were using it for storage because we'd come from a much bigger place to this little place, and I didn't want to pay storage unit rent, so it was anything extra was in there. And it wasn't really full, but then when we put all our stuff in there, it was pretty full. And then we went over, cleaned it up, mailed the keys back, gave my 30 days notice, and went to my daughter's and started looking for a place. And every place that was available for rent at the time, that was a little cottage house like this one, they had the same wiring, with the fabric insulation that this house had. And all I could think of was what I had just been through. And I was like, I just don't feel like it's worth it to risk, no matter how affordable the rent is, moving in and then maybe getting burned to death in our beds or something. Not that these people would intend it, but, it's time to rewire some of these houses. Anyway, so it took me a month of looking, and I couldn't afford the nicer houses because the rents were too high. I certainly couldn't afford to buy anything. I was still trying to recover from, all that mess in California. And just trying to get back on my feet, trying to make this money I'd invested in retraining myself pan out, because it really was a dream of mine. It's still a dream of mine. I should have gone into tech instead of the legal field. I just wanted to emulate an aunt of mine that I idolized. She wasn't in the legal field, but she was an executive secretary, and she earned a lot of money, and she was very pretty, and just I idolized her kind of. And she was so nice too. I really liked this person. And I wanted to be like her. But my personality fits better with tech or neurosurgery or something where I can talk to people but then withdraw. Because I like people, I just don't like them all the time. That sounded wrong. I like people, but I don't want to immerse myself socially all the time. Does that work better? I think it does. Anyway, so my daughter wasn't too happy, but when I told her what happened, she's like, oh, okay. And I hadn't yet figured out that for some reason she's on the side of my ex, even though he's the reason, the things he did to her and to her brother are the reason I got divorced. Confirmed by CPS. Don't forget that. Documented. Anyway, 32 pages that because of him got unsealed and I got a copy. So this person shows up when we finally decide to take a basement apartment that's available in the same complex. And I hear the echoing in the stairwell, and she's telling my basement neighbor very slanderous things about me. Things that are actually about my ex-husband in the court documentation. They're like reassigning the blame to me. And it's very slanderous. Like, it can cause you not to be able to get employment sometimes and have problems with your neighbors, which I did finally. So these people are like slandering me every time I come out the stairwell. Ever since this woman pulls up in her NASCAR, her sports car, with all the logos stuck to it, and I catch her and she giggles nervously and drives away. They go through, or they used to go through town on the 40 every year before they go to the Indy, right? And the other things that happen there with NASCAR. And not all of them, but this, the ones that are coming from Utah and California. And I don't live on that street anymore, so I wouldn't notice unless I happen to be down at the intersection by the gas station. So if it's still happening, I haven't seen it. I really don't care. I'm not into NASCAR per se. Like, I'm not against it. I'll watch a race if somebody else wants me to watch it with them. But I'm just not, like, obsessed with it. Like, it's not my super favorite thing. Or one of them. So, like, she takes off and I'm left with basically the pile of manure she's deposited there, metaphorically speaking. And these people just make it more and more and more like that, the neighbors and their friends. And it's not always that there's a lot of people, sometimes just one or two of them. But there's always somebody there, it seems like, when I leave and then when I come back. If it wasn't every day, it was like nearly every day. Or I would leave and there was nobody there and I'd be like, oh, thank God. And then I come back and there they are. Sometimes it was like a cluster of them, like 4 or 5. And they just all made it their mission to make me miserable. And then there was another incident that happened where there was some monkey business going on in the second floor apartment. Like, there was 3 stories in the middle, and then the roof would slope down, and there was attic area next to the 3 bedrooms. And then there were 2 bedrooms here on the second and first floor. And somebody had climbed up in there who thought he was Mr. James Bond or Mission Impossible or something, and he would sit in the attic and I could hear him. I was like, no, come on, there's no way that's happening. And then his Timex watch went off, the alarm, through the wall while I was laying there early one morning. I was like, no, there's somebody over there. So I started, like, I got one of those apps where you can look and see if, heat patterns, and you can check for listening devices. And sure enough, like, every time I got to that certain part of the wall, and then one time I caught him crawling out of the attic access panel over their front steps. And he made up some excuse for being in there all the time. So it was always the same time of the day, and I kept catching him at it. He kept saying, oh no, there's problems with this apartment, so they're not going to rent it out. So I have to keep going up in there and try and fix it. I'm sitting here thinking, this is bull caca. So that was happening. And there were people sitting on the little stairwell steps because there was a building behind going. So our building sat here facing the main street. And then you go through the parking area. And there was another building sitting sideways, another building sitting sideways, and one on the back. And then it would wrap around the whole complex. And then the other buildings over in the, kind of set, kind of sort of in a rectangle sort of pattern. And then there was the main building in front with us, facing front. So they were in the basement apartment. Well, I was in the basement apartment, and they were participating in this harassment thing. One time I caught one of them looking through my window at me taking a nap on my bed because I placed my bed under the window. And I was like, And so I went out there and I gave him a piece of my mind, and she goes in and shuts her door. So I had to go talk to the management. It's like, I don't understand what this is. Like, why is everybody obsessed over my apartment? And then we moved up to the top because there was this plumbing problem. About once a year, it would back up because they'd put the wrong size exit plumbing for the gray water and the wastewater. And it would just once a year. And the maintenance guy told me. I was like, oh my gosh. So we had moved directly above to that apartment because it was available and empty. And it was the same size and same price. And we needed it. And so they let us sign a lease for up there. Well, they just kept badgering me. And then I find out that they're using a Blackhawk device to listen to my phone calls, to look at my texts, and look at my computer, because the federal employee that gave it to them came and did it while I was at home. And I heard them discuss my name and that I needed to be observed. And I'm like, why? I have a clean background. I don't bother anybody. And so I creep across my room and look down from the window and watch him hand this Blackhawk device. Kind of looks like a really long cell phone or a remote control, right? And it can look at your devices, PC, phone, whatever, within a 5-mile radius. Without a login, without anything. It just clones your signal and can see everything you're seeing, hear everything you're hearing, look at everything you're typing. Really? They have this. Look it up before it's gone and take a screenshot so you can have that information, because it's real. But here's the thing. I found out from a coworker, actually a fellow trucking school student later, who also works for various government agencies. Anyway, he said that those things have to be checked out, or they used to. I don't know these days, but back in that year and prior, you had to check it out. It had a serial number attached to it. That serial number was assigned to a badge. And so if you were using unauthorized, and you had to have a warrant too. You used to. Anyway, so if you were unauthorized and you had one of these things, then it was very likely you'd end up getting arrested. Well, for whatever reason, this person, I don't know if they got arrested. I wasn't around then because I finally decided to move. But while I was there in those apartments, this was going on like almost constantly. I'd tell something to somebody who lived out of state, and they would discuss it 5 minutes later. So that was happening. And I'm not going to tell you what I did to scare them off, because it started a whole chain reaction. Certain people know, which is why I've continued to be being harassed. But anyway, so that was happening on top of these little goblins hanging out at the foot of the stairs, at the landing, so that every time I went to go shopping, go to work, go to the Dollar Tree, anything, they were there, or they were there when I got back, and they would mock me and say slanderous things and trying to provoke me, I think, to get into a fight. And I just would brush it off. And then when I did the 2 or 3 times I talked to the police about what was going on in front of me and in back of me, they were telling me record things. All I had to record with was my cell phone. Well, unfortunately, even though things are that close, the stuff going on outside, even though I could hear it very easily, the phone wouldn't do anything because it had the ambient noise blocker, and I didn't know how to turn it off. And that far away, it's considered ambient noise, right? And then I had no way of recording these people unless I turned my phone recorder on. And I hadn't thought of the fact that I could make a video and load it up on YouTube so it was there for everybody to see. I don't know why I didn't think of it. I think just I'm not the kind of person that wants to get confrontational normally. I don't know why I put up with this. I'm looking back at that and I don't know why. Probably because I was still trying to get over stuff that happened in California and still dealing with my ex somewhat. And I don't know. But anyway, there was I forgot to tell you, there was something that happened in the basement. My daughter had given me this little coffee table, the kind with the little curvy legs, and they're all pretty, and it's like polished stained wood with a glossy coating on the top. One of those little like lamp table, coffee table kind of things. And I don't have it anymore because I don't normally react to a ghost sighting like this, but this one, not the Tau Mono, it was this white guy. And he looked like he had been anorexic or that he had starved to death, something. And I walked into the living room just in time to see him do that weird crab walk like you see in the horror movies. And craning his neck around unnaturally at me and then trying to avoid contacting my eyes like he was a bad spirit and I'm a good person. I didn't say perfect. I just said good. And like if you're a good person, sometimes these bad people, the people that were bad in life, they can't look you in the eye. They can't look at you. They do this thing. They avoid your gaze. But we made eye contact for a second, and then he crab crawled underneath that coffee table, and he just seemed to stay there. And I was like, did my daughter give me a haunted table? Like, what the F? So I burned it in the fireplace. All these apartments have fireplaces, right? Every single one of them. Actual wood burning fireplaces. That was so cool, especially in the wintertime when it gets cold. You could go get one of these pallets that were sort of falling apart that the stores would throw away and disassemble it and cut it in half, the long pieces, and stick it in the fireplace. Very nice. So I decided that even though this thing had been stained and shellacked, it was going in the fireplace because I'm not having it be attached to something in my house. So I just disassembled the thing into little pieces and piled it up in the fireplace and burned it the next time I decided to have a fire. And he went away. And then I moved upstairs. There had been a murder. And I had not been home when the murder happened, but there were police there and everything. All the red tape, do not cross tape and stuff like that. And of course, this town likes to downplay it and pretend like nothing like that ever happens here. And then in the next breath, they want to tell you, oh, there's all kinds of crime here. So when they were cleaning it, I had overheard the cleaning lady talking about how she had saged it. And when they were cleaning, they were getting attacked by this thing, like physically attacked, like thrown across the room and had like cleaning bottles of cleaning fluid thrown at them and stuff. And so she was over there trying to, there's this place called the Trading Post, I think. I don't know, it's not there anymore. The lady that owned it died. She was Native American. Anyway, she was buying sage, smudge sticks or sage wrap things to try and sage the place. And that didn't work. And so then she was saying prayers and everything, and she had drawn a cross permanently. This is an apartment that they're going to rent, right? She had drawn a cross permanently on one of the walls in black. And she didn't know I was going to move up there. Like, I didn't know I was going to move up there when this happened, and I had forgotten about it. So when we're moving in, there's this cross. And I kind of felt the feeling, but I never saw anything. Like, somebody that had been murdered there had angry feelings. And so I just resaged it. I painted over the cross because that's actually not a good way to get rid of a spirit. If you knew what I know about crosses. animals got slaughtered on crosses in Roman times. So when they slaughtered people, and more than just Jesus got slaughtered on it, they were treating you like an animal, literally. Right? They would hang them up to bleed them out. So when they hung up a person, I mean, think about it. And anyway, gosh, my slipper came off my heel and it bothers me. Ooh, that was a funny face. Anyway, so yeah, I painted over it and I put a piece of furniture in front of it because I was like, I am not, because you could kind of still see it through there because she'd painted it in black. I had to keep putting coats of paint on that so that when I moved out, I could get my security deposit back because I knew they were going to forget that it was them that did it. Even if they remembered, they were going to pretend they forgot so they could charge me money for painting the walls. So yeah, I finally ended up having to sand it off, replaster, and paint. Just little sample bucket things. And so I didn't really ever see a spirit. And I said some prayers and I saged and I blessed them and they left. But after being here from 2011 to 2016, I had so many struggles work-wise because of all the mischief that I kind of sort of described to you. Just compound that by every single job, I'm having these problems, and I'm not doing anything to provoke it. I'm just going in, clocking in, doing my work, coming back home, and running my computer repair business, or trying to. And it's not getting off the ground. Like, I used to even keep paperwork and try and make it more solid, and kept trying to get loans so I could finally get a place to have this business out of instead of my home, because in a small town it's just really hard, especially when you're new there. And I power positive thinking, I even believed in it, and it just, other people didn't want me to believe in it. It just was really hard. Too many things to try and work on. And I finally just gave up on it, and for a little while, and then when I came back I tried to do it again. And then again. Someday maybe this will happen, and maybe I'm just not supposed to ever do this. It seems like a waste of $11,000 to go to school again, right? For something I really actually like. And anyway, 2016 rolls around and I get my tax refund, and I've gone and got my CDL even in 2014 and drove all through 2014, 2015 to try and be my own bank, because every trucker I've ever known has always had money for like boats and houses, and not like big houses, like usually a trailer home or a prefab home, but a nice, decent sized home. And like the boat, the RV thing, whatever, motorcycle, because they work hard and they get paid well, and it's a dangerous job, right? But I didn't realize that you have to do it for more than 5 or 6 years before they stop trying to treat you like a noob and skim money off of your pay and tell you that they're going to pay you hub miles, and then they pay you as the crow flies. Just super frustrating. And my paycheck was less than my second son that was working at McDonald's at the time. He had worked at some retail, and then he worked at McDonald's because they started raising their pay. And sometimes they helped you with your education because they didn't like the reputation that you work there and you never do anything else, right? So they're trying to help people that work there get a college education. So he was going to go that way, and then he ended up doing something else. But yeah, he did go to college. And but his paycheck there was more than my paycheck driving a truck, and I was driving all my hours. And I'd calculate it out and think, okay, cool, I can send this much home. And they were skimming $200 or $300 off every time from what I had calculated. We're talking several hundred miles they're slicing off of my drive time for no reason. I still have a perfect driving record, no DUIs, no accidents. And my freight would come undamaged because I'm careful when I make turns and start and stop and all that kind of stuff. It had no damages, in fact. So they reward me by paying me less? Are you serious? I don't understand that. And I learned in the driver's lounge that you have to drive for about 5 or 6 years before they stop treating you like a newbie. And it was infuriating. I worked for 3 different companies. One of them never paid me. That's another story. Anyway, there was a lawsuit and I joined in as a plaintiff and I've never heard back from the law firm. So I need to look up that lawsuit and see if anything was awarded and why I was never notified. Because the amount of time I was there, and I did give them my new address and phone number when I moved to Washington State out of fury with this town for how much harassment I was receiving. Literally everywhere I went. Got to eat, certain people, the same ones sitting at my stairwell, would harass me. Anyway, I finally quit working for them, and I worked for another company out of Washington State, which made me nostalgic because part of the time when I was growing up and my foster father was raising me, he was in the Air Force. The Air Force was his cover. He actually worked for a bureau. And that was the cover that he had so that he could follow a certain person around who was on one of their watch lists. He was just doing his job. Had nothing to do with opinion. He's getting paid by them. He goes where he's assigned. But Washington was so beautiful, and that's probably why I like rain. I love a rainy day or a rainy night. There's a song called that. But anyway, I like that song too. So I was driving through there a lot, and then I ended up working for a company up there. And of course I was driving there a lot. I would start there and go elsewhere and come back. So when I got mad at them too, because I did all this stuff to pass so I could drive a heavy haul, and the owner, who is from World War II era and is supposedly retired, every time a female got hired, he would come and monitor and stand next to you and critique you. And then he would insist that it wasn't safe for you to go out if you didn't have a husband or boyfriend, so you would have to be on one of their refrigerated trucks. And I was like, when I left the other company, I had discovered I don't like driving a reefer. It keeps me awake at night. The fuel for the refrigerated portion is so stinky, and it's right there by where you put your head. And I don't need that, when you sleep at night. I don't like it, and it kicks on and kicks off and kicks on. I never got any sleep. I don't like it. And they had promised me I would be on heavy haul if I, as long as I pass the physical. And I'm telling you, that just every excuse I could think of because of this guy. And I was the only one in class that knew all the things. I was the only female that finished, and I was the only one in that class that knew all the things, even though I had never driven heavy haul. I just am pretty smart, and I understand physics and, things like that. So I was the one answering all the questions, and the instructor was super pleased with me, and so was his assistant, and they wanted me to drive heavy haul because I knew what I was doing. I was good, and I was a good driver, really safe driver. But the owner wouldn't let it happen, even when he helped me get a TWIC card. And I passed that background check in 48 hours. Just make sure you're not a terrorist so you can go into shipyards and rail yards where they make extra certain that you're not going to be doing mischief. And that didn't even help me get on heavy haul. And so I had come back out of frustration. I just quit. The next time I didn't have a load, and I just told them off and I left. Came back home. And the climate in the place was so bad. I had made friends with somebody that worked for the fire and rescue. And she ended up being a friend for a while when I got back. This town is so weird. That just the way people think, some of them. Everything will be fine, and then for no reason, it's not. Like, no bad disagreements, no insults passed, no weird things said. They just suddenly, I don't know what the deal is. But when I left, we were still friends. And she had even stood up for me against some of these people harassing me and told them to cut it out. And I finally had enough. We got our tax refunds. Those of us that were working, Michael, the youngest, wasn't working yet. I wasn't going to use names. I keep using names. Anyway, my youngest wasn't working yet. He wasn't quite old enough. And we just wanted out of there. We were not having a good experience. It was like constantly humiliating, and people seemed to have a lot of mental issues and just didn't want to deal with it. So because I had missed Seattle and Vancouver and Spokane and all those places so much and got so nostalgic over it, I suggested it, and the boys said, yeah, let's go there. And they liked it. It's nice. The landscape is nice. Most of the people are nice. No place is perfect, okay? It's not going to happen. Had some adventures there. That'll be in a different video. And then I went for half a year there. Thought I was going to stay there indefinitely. And then my daughter had a difficult pregnancy, so I went clear out to Kentucky where she was with the intention that we were going back, because I had just lined up a job with a bank as their help desk for their employees, internal help desk. I mean, it was going to be a fantastic job. And I mean, we had things that we were going back to, and things happened and financially, and we ended up getting stuck there. And that was not the intention. And so we were there for half a year too. So it was a year away. Then I found out that somebody had stolen my identity and had hooked up utilities in my name, who was working at the apartment complex where I was a resident manager. And we had finally got our money together and we wanted to go back. So I wanted to sue. We wanted to go back and I wanted to sue this person, have her prosecuted. And we get to Sydney, Nebraska, and my tire unwraps off the van. So I very carefully and firmly made the van go to the shoulder of the road, and then we were putting a spare on. And then this patrol guy comes up, highway patrol, and he said he helps us finish putting it on. And then he's like, oh no, your front tire's coming undone too. I mean, look at it. So we had to drive very carefully. Well, it wasn't coming undone yet, but it had these brown blisters on it. They didn't look right. And I had checked, having driven a truck, I had checked walking around the vehicle before I left. It's just become like an automatic thing. I mean, you do it enough, you have to do it, right? You do it enough times and you just keep doing it. So hang on, my battery's running low for some reason. Okay, that's weird. Somebody turned off the power strip and it wasn't me. Okay, so we should be okay. I'm going to have to do this one again. Anyway, so I was telling you that we ended up getting stuck and coming back here because the tire blew in Nebraska and we had to buy a new tire and we had to stay in a hotel another night and extra meals, and it was amazing how quickly all my startup money for being back in Washington was being sucked away. So we started texting and calling people that we knew here in town. And one of them was this Ashley person. I'm saying her name because it's a kind of a common name and I'm not saying her last name. Anyway, and there were friends of my son's, and all of a sudden, like, I didn't know I had this many friends, but I had a good half a dozen offers, and my sons had friends that were saying, oh yeah, come stay with us. And I was so baffled because we hadn't been made to feel exactly welcome in this town, and here these people were glad to have us back. Huh? Like, huh? Really? So we tried to answer some of these people because they answered us so fast. Like, we'd been waiting and waiting, and they suddenly all answered us at once. And we couldn't get them back, get their attention back for texting or calling because, they're at work. It's the daytime. And we're traveling during working hours. And, we were going to make it on the weekend, but the delay from the tire problem made us still be traveling on a Monday. So people were at work. And we ended up staying with one of my middle son's friends because they had the day off and they were able to answer us. So we stayed there, and I decided that if this stuff continued in this town that I had experienced before, I wasn't going to take it. And I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do because I don't like litigation. Having worked in the field, it's just so negative and time-consuming and expensive. Like, you need to defend your rights, but, you only live once, according to most people. And even though I believe that you do live more than once, you're only here for a short time. You've got a lot of things to do while you're here. And I don't like to have very much of that kind of negative stuff in my life. I avoid it. I'd rather do the fun stuff, the good stuff, the happy stuff. So I did not want to do litigation, and I kind of feel like it just makes you seem like the tattletale kid in class most of the time. Sometimes I think it's necessary, but most of the time. And then at first there wasn't anything like that, except a little drama with getting jobs and place to stay, and one of my son's friends being very cruel with me. I got the job first again. I went down to Denver to train, and while I was down there, they decided that my boys could stay with them and I could not. So I was living in my van all of a sudden. And I was like, this is crazy. And keep in mind, they were at work all day and I was looking for a job, and then I wasn't even there. So, like, what? And it seemed to stem back to me not going out to dinner with the young kids because Ashley wanted to go out and we hadn't seen each other for a long time. I didn't think they would care, because usually when an adult wants to interact with the young crowd in this town, the 20-somethings, they just look at you like you're covered in poo. So I didn't think they would care. I thought they would be relieved. But this kid took it in an egomaniacal way, like I was insulting his person by not coming out to dinner with them. I was the only 50-something person there. You know? And it's this town where they don't like the older crowd hanging with them. But that seems to have been what started it. I'm not 100% positive, but that seems to be what started this weird behavior. To this day, they act strange with me. And before that, this is one of the people in this town that was super friendly with me. So I don't get it. I really don't get it. What a silly thing to get that mad over and have like a Hatfields and McCoy's type, well, not that bad, but like this super negative charge going for this many years. We've been here for 5 years again. Anyway, it's 45 minutes and I have gone over, but there's just so much. So that's why. All this crazy slandering and harassment and, there was gang stalking too. And when I got here, there was gang stalking again. Just stupid stuff. Calling my job, trying to get me in trouble, making up stories that are bizarre, like, oh, I'm her psychiatrist. Oh, I'm her. No psychiatrist would do that. They'd risk losing their license. That's a violation of the doctor-patient code, right? That does not happen. They would get. I could sue them. So, yeah, but people are dumb and they believe things. Most of them. EJ's the only one, well, not the only one, but he's one of a few that just was like, you don't make sense, right? Or they'd pretend to be my parole officer or just any number of things. And these are people following me from elsewhere, right, over the years. But then there was the harassment and stalking within town. And I'm just not somebody that likes that kind of thing. I'm not going to put up with it. So the reasons for starting this 81625 are based in that. Not everybody here is like that, but the ones that are relentless and they are just overbearing and they have no foundation for it. There's no reason for the stuff they do. And I noticed last time I was here and then this time that I came back that they don't just do it to me. It's like a tradition with certain types of people that are in this town. I don't know why, but it's like they think that's their job to bother people for petty, stupid reasons or based on what somebody else said, that it's their job to hate and harass people if certain other people want them to do it. And I'm not going to put up with it anymore. It's wrong. It shouldn't be happening. And so the people that do the things, I'm going to put them on YouTube. At least via these little chatty videos. And I'm going to share them with the world. You humiliate me publicly, you harass me publicly, you get away with it because for whatever reason the police here don't feel like they need to do anything about it unless it's something more serious. Like they don't think of gang stalking and trespassing on your property and stealing your screens off your windows and things like that are serious enough to investigate for whatever reason. They're worried more about drug dealers and domestic violence and things like that, which, that's a priority. But when it happens to me as often as it does, somebody should care besides me, right? It's happened so much that I would believe that it qualifies as felonious. It's pretty serious. It's disrupting my daily life. And law enforcement wants to just brush it off. Oh, well, this isn't that serious. Yeah, well, if you couple it with all the couple hundred other things that happen within a month or two, and then Add that to a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Breaking and entering. They have come into this house until I changed the locks. And even after I changed the locks, they'd still come in. And then we put security screens on the doors. That's a couple $100 a pop. And if you don't remember to put props on the windows, sticks, they will come in through the windows. And I'm not a rich person. And these people, some of them that are doing it, that I've had them drop their driver's license, wedding ring, these people have jobs. They earn more money than anybody in this house does. There's no need. It's not necessary. They've got no reason to be here. Ever. This is just being petty and helping an ex to get revenge, and another certain person doing it because he thinks he owns everybody. And he's not dead, by the way. The other day at the library, he sat across from me. And he had a buddy keeping a lookout for him over in the aisle between the books, and kept peeking through to us. And then this certain person would glance at him, and they'd kind of give each other this funny, mischievous smile. And then he'd look at me like this, and twinkly eyes, and like it's such a funny joke. It's not a funny joke. The stuff he did to me, no. He owes me quite a bit of an apology and some financial compensation and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I tried to participate in the lawsuit, and they wouldn't let me. I called early and often. And even though I was doped up, amnesia goes away from regular injuries, and also amnesia from this particular experimental drug, which is now mainstream and a pharmaceutical. You can be in a dream state and still be ambulatory and converse with people and do things. It's kind of like Ambien. Anyway, it causes amnesia. But that amnesia goes away, and you start remembering things that don't fit in because you were unconscious when you went there. Kind of like when you're a little kid and you're driving in a car and you fall asleep. But much more serious, of course. And then you get there, and you're suddenly in this place, and you're in a dream state, so you think it's a dream, and you get the wispy white filmy stuff on your vision for some reason. I don't know why. Kind of like when you're in a swimming pool and you open your eyes to look around while you're swimming, like that. But you can see everybody, and you're talking to people, and you're saying silly things, and you're like, why am I saying silly things? And you're doing stuff that you normally wouldn't do because they told you to do it. And your logic is not all there, and your freedom of choice, your free will is gone because you're in a dream state. Think about your dreams and how things go down in a dream when you remember the dream. And you're not really thinking the way you normally would think because it's a dream and you know you're dreaming. Well, under this drug, you're not dreaming, but you think that you're dreaming because it does things to your brain. And so you're looking like an idiot, and people think that you're a drug addict or an alcoholic or something, and you don't even know you're not in your bed sleeping. That's not fair. So maybe I just want to end this video, since I'm so close to an hour anyway, by telling this person that if you really do have such feelings for me that you want to talk to me again and you're not just scamming me, first of all, you got to get past the fact that you were such a philandering fool and you didn't care if the women were the right age. And second, I don't know how I'd get past that personally. I don't know how. And second, you got to remember that You tried to approach me as somebody while I was awake, and you didn't want to go through a proper courtship phase, and I didn't really know who you were because I don't travel in those circles and I don't pay attention to wealthy, famous people so much, unless I have to or they're in the news. So I didn't know who you were. I'd heard the name, but I didn't really register it. And you wanted me to fly out there to New York and stay at your place or stay at the hotel and let you stay there, and then we go see a rabbi in the morning. And then you wanted me to, since I was not okay with that, you didn't even think about why that wasn't okay. You wanted to have me come stay at your townhome, and then in the morning we would go to see a rabbi. And I still wasn't okay with it because it's the same thing, just a different location. It didn't dawn on you that talking on the phone a little bit and several online conversations does not qualify as knowing somebody. And just because you know me, because you knew me while you had me unconscious and were dragging me all over the globe and having me do crazy things, I don't remember you. You have to start over like I've never met you. And you didn't want to do that. You want to just pick up where we left off, except we didn't leave off. I was unconscious or semi-conscious. It's inappropriate to just barely meet somebody online, talk to them once on the phone, and want them to fly out to where you live, spend a night together, and then go talk to a rabbi about getting married. That's completely inappropriate. That's improper courtship. You didn't even bother to let me get to know you. You might think you know me, but you know me while I'm in a semi-conscious state. You don't know me. And I certainly don't know you. I know of you now because you've gotten yourself very famous. And everybody thinks you're dead. But you keep approaching me, so I know very well that you are not dead. And I can't help but think that after all that I've been through and the injury I had 5 years ago that I'm just now recovering from and still having migraines and other kinds of owies, so I dress very casually and I'm out of shape and I don't really worry about toiletries and perfume and jewelry and makeup and styling my hair. I just make sure I'm clean and dressed. I just don't think, I'm not convinced that you are enamored of me. And the way you're acting at the library, I feel like you were putting on an act and trying to make a fool of me. I'm not into that. You're going to have to do a lot more to convince me that you're sincere. And I know that guys only care about what a woman looks like initially. I had brothers, okay? I understand men. I know how you guys think. And unlike most women, I know that what you look like isn't as important if you have strong feelings. But I just don't think, after what I know about you from the news, because I don't have any other frame of reference really while I'm conscious, I just don't think it's sincere. You need to spend more time investing in me to prove that you're sincere. And I understand that you have to be very careful because of the way things went down. And it's quite a risk for me because of this. Like, what happens when the right people realize that you're not dead? Right? What happens then? And I know about the painting. I remember that little event in my life because I was semi-conscious and I was cold and you wouldn't let me put the blanket back over me. You've done a lot to me. To me. Not with me. To me. Sir. So I'm just going to end it at as close to 60 minutes as possible with this little message. You have to invest yourself and your time in me while I'm awake. Otherwise, I just think that you're probably just trying to set me up and humiliate me and play more games. You have to act like we just met. And you have to court me properly. And I might not even let you do that because of what I know about you. What you are willing to participate in for your paycheck. If you even had a paycheck. Because you were pretty wealthy. Remember that? Or was that pretend wealth? Knowing what I know about this all now. Oh, I've gone from being funny to being angry. Sorry, but it came up because it's on the timeline here. It's very closely related to all this. Maybe I ought to go back to being funny a little bit before I get off here. So yeah, expect some more funny 8165 videos because Earthlings and fellow Americans, I have a lot to say about certain personalities in this town. And that's how I'll close this after giving somebody a piece of my mind. And it's quite a big mind, so it's like the wall of chocolate at PC Chang's or PF Chang's. Kind of a serving that I'm giving him. Right? He deserves it. Probably deserves worse than that. I mean, the shenanigans. Good grief. Yeah. But it's my turn now, and I'm going to tell people things. I'm going to be very careful about not saying names, but I'm going to show you the humorous side of it and how funny you are to me, and I'm going to ignore the part where you piss me off, unless I turn it into something funny. And I'm going to share it with everybody, because that's what you did to me. And that golden rule thing, that only works when you participate in the golden rule. Don't do to other people what you don't want done to you. Mm-hmm. You know what the consequences are for not following the golden rule? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It's not a commandment. It's consequences for bad behavior, for not being considerate. Anyway, Earthlings, have a good day. And I'm going to try and make sure that these videos stay humorous and entertaining. I think I'm getting better at it. Anyway, see you later.